All right, so time to join us for a warming fireside chat. Today, Helmut Reisinger, CEO EMEA and LATAM at Palo Alto Network, Chris Wisselfall, CTO and co-founder of Veracode, and Johannes Steger, Tagesspiegel background, will share their view on fighting digital threats in the age of AI. So welcome on stage, Helmut, Chris, and Johannes.
So you two, great to have you. And I'm sure when you look at the program, we can see that there's a lot of AI involved. I didn't count, but it's a lot. And let's bring in some bitterness here, because we all have something to do with cybersecurity. And maybe the first question regarding you two, and starting with Chris maybe, when was the moment, or do you remember the moment when you first realized it will change your work and your perception of cybersecurity dramatically?
Yeah, so we started looking into machine learning to classify things, malware, detecting certain things that were changing in code. That was about 7 years ago. But to me, that didn't seem like that big of a change. It just seemed like a smarter way of doing analysis. I think what really hit me was with generative AI and understanding that attackers could use generative AI to generate attacks, and that when people added generative AI to their software, it was going to create this new attack surface that people were going to be able to attack. So I think when generative AI hit, my mind started going, thinking, this is going to create a lot of new risks that are going to have to be dealt with.
Emma, what was your moment?
So good morning, everybody, by the way. Good to see you all. First thing to say is that Palo Alto Networks, we have been doing AI, which we then called machine learning, for more than 10 years. What we saw with generative AI coming into play is that there is 3 immediate impacts, and we see this tangibly because, as you know, we are in network security, in cloud security, and in security operations center solutions for cyber. It's speed, scale, and sophistication. Chris was mentioning many more attackers will use that. The speed to create good ransomware, socially engineered, goes from about 14 hours down to 10 to 12 minutes. The scale, if you think about the Move IT vulnerability, it touches immediately 35 million people, end user. So it's speed, scale, and sophistication. Sophistication, think about deepfake. You probably heard about this famous wire transfer of $25 million done by an employee in Hong Kong, believing that the other side was really the true CFO and the true other team members. The problem was this was all deepfake. So we need to be cognizant of that, and that's why our aim is always, and has been always, to provide real-time cybersecurity, because this is the only way how to protect against an AI-driven threat landscape that is, fully agree, growing substantially by not only AI, but also geopolitics and others.
You mentioned some things, and I think before we go deeper, let's cluster the threats we have here. You mentioned deepfake, and I think one thing that always comes to my mind when we talk about the threats that come through AI is social engineering, which today, I mean, we all know these emails, which are very, very, let's say, basic. That's one thing when I think about risk, but Chris, what else? What is else there that we should cluster before we go deeper?
Yeah, so I think that something like a phishing email obviously can be made much better using generative AI because it knows how to spell properly, use the right grammar, can actually be asked to speak in a particular tone, like what would a salesperson sound like? What would a customer support person sound like? So there's that level of sophistication that can be added to someone who's a very basic, might not even be their first language, might not even speak the language. And so those simple attacks like phishing can be made almost perfected, if you think about it, using generative AI. But the other aspect of it is just scale. The scale, like one individual attacker can do so many more social engineering attacks. A lot of social engineering attacks take time, right? You have to kind of go back and forth over hours or days. Some of the more sophisticated ones where you're kind of bilking someone out of their money with a financial attack often called pig butchering, where you gain the trust of someone and then you get them to give access to your bank account. You're going to invest their money. Really, really devastating attacks. They take a long time, and this can be automated. So it's really the sophistication and the automation of social engineering which really kind of changes the game with generative AI.
But you want to add something there?
Yeah, it's simply put, the phishing approach will be simply perfected. Whilst 2 years ago we still saw a lot of those type of attacks trying to look very smart, but they had orthographic issues, misspelling. You could even from the spelling realize, oh, this is coming from this or that country or area. So you really could see that. There will be no more mistakes on that front. There will be this scale effect. And just to also show you the scale effect, what we see across our network security SASE solution, cloud assets, endpoints in our security operations center, there you see the speed and the scale. Last year we had per day 1.5 million new attacks that were not identified before. This year, so May timeframe, it's 2.3 million attacks globally that we see. This shows you the impact of the speed on the AI front that is doing. And of course, something that where you are playing a lot is also you're leveraging AI for coding, for example. And that also is a big danger, that you import malicious content from libraries into stuff that you are creating. And that's where we try, and Chris does the same, to help you to make this secure.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that every time we talk about attacks, and especially when we say, hey, this is going to be really hard to detect, it's going to be a devastating, sophisticated attack, I always like to talk a little bit about solution. And oftentimes the solution to prevent this from being, these attacks from actually landing and working has nothing to do with the actual detection. I don't think we're going to be able to determine whether it's a phishing attack or not. It's going to be that sophisticated. So you can't rely on necessarily detection. You have to look at some other solutions like changing the way you're authenticating. Can you hear me?
We need a...
Should I pass on the micro?
Yeah. Oh, it's back. So you have to look at a solution that isn't necessarily detection. Like using multi-factor authentication is a great solution for someone tricking you to log into another system. And so I think we have to think a little differently with AI. We're not going to be able to necessarily detect a lot of the attacks, but there can be security solutions that prevent them from actually causing harm.
So Helmut, when we talk about solutions, and also we are a developer conference, and we think about when I use AI, you mentioned integrate code that might be doing something harmful. What is your advice or your perspective on how to work with it, and what are the parameters you should be having in mind?
Yeah. So generically, the cybersecurity industry is a very strange industry. It's driven by the dynamics of the startup community, the investors, and therefore, on average, a large organization has about 30 different tools to protect itself for their... Is this better? For the digital essentials, thank you so much for giving a signal. On average, a large organization has about 30 different tools. So that's why when it's leveraging AI already for real-time cyber, you can leverage it for highly automated, we call it autonomous cybersecurity solution, because we don't have the hundreds of thousands of people to cope with all of the avalanche of data increases, and therefore the threat landscape increases. And third, because it's so fragmented and you have to deal with all the complexity, just imagine all the transaction cost implied, we give you a modular way of platformization. So linking AI and what we are doing is there, we have announced, because everybody talks about generative AI, in cyber we believe, yes, you have the co-pilots that we also have, but we said there is to be precision AI, because in cyber, if something is bad, you want us, that your coding CI and CD process is clean, we want us to take it out. So precision AI, what we did is to future-proof the AI journey of whichever enterprise. And by the way, the enterprises themselves are connected to subcontractors, et cetera, to really protect that. And we said there is AI access, AI runtime security, and AI security posture management, so that really you are protected from that on your life cycle journey of coding, but on cloud and application security, I think we're going to dive a bit deeper.
Yeah, but Chris, maybe there's our way of thinking how to code, how to work with software, and also work with technology in general should change.
Yes, I mean, we're at a development conference. We have to talk about using AI to build software, both to generate code, but also to make your system smarter, right? To be able to have chat interfaces and things like that. And so one of the things that I do at Veracode is application security. So both from the perspective of finding the vulnerabilities in the code that a developer might write, but also understanding if AI components are put into the system, how is that changing changing the application? What new risks does it create? And one of the problems I see is it's not perfect, right? It doesn't write perfect code because it's been trained on imperfect code. We all know that code has bugs. We've all found bugs in open source. We know we have bugs in the software we write. And so if you train on that, you're going to get software that has bugs in it. There's no doubt about that. So also vulnerabilities, right? It's going to write code that is vulnerable. So we can't have an over-reliance on trusting the code generation to be perfect. We have to think of it as it's just another developer that is probably as good as another developer on your team. Maybe it's a senior developer or a developer that has a lot of experience, but it's still, at the end of the day, you can't get rid of testing, security testing, performance testing, all the things that you normally do, you have to still do on that code. And if you're embedding an LLM, if you're embedding a chat interface into your software, you have to treat that just like any other piece of software, threat modeling it, design reviews, and things like that. So it's going to allow us to go faster. So one of the things that, and I'm going to talk about this actually tomorrow on the main stage at 11, how do we deal with this problem of more code being generated faster by these automated systems? Application security changed when we moved to DevOps and everything went faster. Security testing had to change. It couldn't just be a manual pen test before you pushed your code to production or shipped your code. You had to embed it into your development process. Well, now we have massive speed of code generation. One developer can write 10 times as much code. We're going to have to fundamentally change the development process because of that.
Yeah, if I may complement this, isn't it as a coder, there is a permanent inherent conflict. You want to do great coding, put cool features out there, and then comes Mr. or Mrs. Security and says, hold up. First, we need to do this according to this and that policy. This is wrong, and there is this vulnerability. So what we are aiming at is to give you also a coding experience. You might have heard about the Chekhov vulnerability scanner. There's about 100 million downloads already out there. It's part of our Prisma Cloud portfolio. And if I look to the way how you're using platforms, there's about 2 billion of HashiCorp Terraform open source downloads. 2 billion. So you are leveraging an open, connected system to drive the coding experience. Nonetheless, what we see, it's held back if you fall into the traps to do cybersecurity visibility only, but not fixing it. So we say, in order to allow you to concentrate on coding, you should not be concentrating on fixing the issues. We take this away with plugins that we have in our CNAP, Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. That is done there so that you have plugins for your JetBrains, for your VS Stack, etc. that helps you and does even inline suppression if needed, etc. Again, the aim is to render what you're doing more productive. I just listened to the Atlassian CTO there as well. They said, well, we need to enable more concentration and focus for the coders that they can focus on the deep coding, not the stuff in order to do the protection part.
You're nodding. You want to add something?
Oh, so one of the things that I feel is a necessary solution is automated code fixing, right? So code generation is going to have some problems. We need LLMs that are trained to fix code, fix bugs, fix security problems. Because if you think about it, if the code generation is wrong, 1 out of 10 times it has a bug, 1 out of 10 snippets of code it generates, but you're doing this really fast, you need a fast way to fixing, or the fix process is going to slow you down and you're going to lose all the gains of code generation. So we need to build code fixing solutions in order to get the full benefit of code generation.
So maybe to bring some other stakeholder in, we had a very significant regulation coming into the process of getting international law. It's the AI Act. And my question is, what do you think, can this regulation work? And can it work in a fast, you mentioned speed, scale up, can it actually address the risks or the threats we are seeing? Do you want to start?
Well, we know that threats do not, or the digital space does not know borders. And that's why I believe Europe sometimes it's considered the Silicon Valley of regulation. To some extent, yes. On the other hand, it does something good. But it poses a big challenge for you as coders and organizations who are faced with that. I'll give you an example. The time between compromise of an organization and then exfiltration of your data, your good stuff that you have created, 3 years ago was about 20 days. Now, in this year, 2024, it is a question of hours driven by AI, among others. So, on the other hand, historically, it took 6 days on average to discover something, but the NIS2 regulation that will come into Germany, into all the European states as of October this year, requires you have to, if you have a big suspicion, within 24 hours, you have to report. The Stock Exchange Commission in the US for a stock-listed company asks you within 4 days. So I think what it does, it drives us for better preparedness and for a better institutionalization of it. But with this, and you are mostly working, I think the developer community is decently spread across the world, but also across enterprises. You cannot afford to build up huge manpower to do this. So that's why I come again with, you need a highly autonomous and ideally not fragmented, but integrated cybersecurity on that front. Regulation will help. Please do bear in mind, the draft proposal for AI regulation in Europe was done before the US came up with a proposal. Both are not so different, but they're pretty similar. But as well, taking into account that we want to ensure that something good is done with AI, I think that's also worth noting that here Europe was actually first.
Looking from the east.
Yes. I think that I'm not a big regulation person, being from the US and being a founder of a startup company. But I think in this case, with AI, that we absolutely need regulation. And I'm happy to see that governments actually are moving rather quickly. You think governments move slowly over many years. I mean, there's already an anti-bias regulation, I believe, in effect in the EU, because that was one of the first uses of AI was things like screening people's resumes and then using it in the hiring process. And then very quickly there was anti-bias regulation was put into place. So I think governments are taking AI very seriously, the risks of it, and we're already seeing, you know, in the U.S. we don't really have AI regulations yet, but we have executive orders, and it's showing that the government is actually working towards this pretty quickly, but not as quickly as the EU. The EU is always faster on regulation.
Yes, sometimes speed on regulation is a disadvantage. Sometimes it's something good. Think about the coding for fintech sector. There's a big regulation out there in the financial services, but it's in order to avoid a repetition of what we all experienced in 2008. So there is something good out there, what is being done. And what I'm seeing at the moment is, and we just had 2 weeks ago, we signed up a major multinational company, active globally, and their major aim was, can you help us? We have our coders sit in US and they sit in Europe, but our production plants are in Asia, particularly in Thailand and Taiwan. Can you help us to future-proof our AI journey? And the question the CIO, together with his CISO, asked, CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, how can I be sure that our teams in Australia for a given local marketing campaign are not putting some sensitive data which is not yet for the launch of the product before ahead of the launch available into an generative AI tool, because there's about 250 out there. There's not only ChatGPT. And in this remote country, how can I be sure that? And that's why we said that the answer there is this precision AI approach, both in terms of AI access, but as well in AI security posture management. And just to show you the benefit, and I think the same is true for Chris, in cybersecurity, by leveraging AI, we have deployed for a very large organization as well our AI-driven security operations center solution. They have had a very fragmented estate. Now they put it onto one platform. The outcome, and this touches 320,000 endpoints that we have deployed for all of their staff across the world. After using it, the mean time to remediate went down from 3.5 days to 19 minutes. This is not possible to do this with hands and feet. It's simply leveraging AI for doing the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think AI has great potential to help with cybersecurity solutions. You know, a lot of cybersecurity solutions are massively scaled because the amount of data that's moving through networks, trying to do anomaly detection, things like this. AI is actually really good at sifting through huge data sets, right, and looking for differences, looking for perhaps variants of malware. It's really good at looking at those big data sets. The thing that I think still has to happen, though, is you still need the human in the loop. I don't think we're going to see like fully autonomous cybersecurity systems that are quarantining software or shutting down the network and things like this. But I think it will, for that SOC analyst, that SOC engineer who is investigating a particular incident, it's going to allow them to be much more productive. And we need this because there's a lack of cybersecurity people. So I'm really hopeful that it's going to make people much more productive.
Yeah.
Can I make one point about this human touch, what you just say, rightfully so? The feedback of this global company on their SOC employees was also interesting of the CIO. And the person said, you know, one of the learnings we have is our SOC people are smiling again. And that's the same thing, I believe, for you in the coding space and the developer space. You want to do the cool stuff and to create good code and not spend big part of your time on fixing vulnerabilities where your friends sitting in the SecOps team say, hey, you need to correct this, you need to correct that. There is still 50% is done manually. Yeah? And a lot of these things can be automated to give you also a better coding experience. and therefore also better output and outcome for what you're doing good as well.
So we came from the threats to the opportunities. That's nice. So, but looking at the time, we have 5 minutes left, and I would love you guys to ask questions if you like. You know how to use the app, and if there are any, I can use the last 4 minutes as well.
Yeah, so we actually have a question from the audience. I encourage you all, use the time, type some questions in. And yeah, the question is about, you have talked about attacks that use Gen AI. What's been doing to counter those attacks? More AI usage to defend AI attacks?
Good question. Chris?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a mix of both. I mean, in some cases, you are going to need an AI system to detect attacks and defend against attacks because you need that speed to do that. But if you can come up with a way of defending against the attack without having to use an AI system, that's typically a better solution. Like, so I mentioned, to prevent phishing, it would be great to use two-factor as opposed to detecting phishing. But I think with other types of exploits that, say, can be like variants of a particular exploit can be generated by AI, you're probably going to need something to detect all those different variants, and that's probably going to be something that was trained on it. So I think it's going to be a mix of the two.
Yeah, I would strongly advocate that in order to be safer tomorrow, we need to leverage AI on the defense side even more. If we think about it, at the end of the day, cybersecurity is primarily a data issue. If you think about digital threats that are out there, it's a data issue. How you want to protect better, you need good data. And you need to be able to, we call it stitching, to structure it, because then you can correlate and you can actually apply your playbooks to it. So I think we need more better telemetry data that we have with a huge data lake, and then we can give you a better outcome of it. And that's why, if you think about it, if cybersecurity is a data issue in the digital space, you mentioned networks, that's why we believe more in a holistic approach between the networks, between the knowledge workers, which is called SASE in the cybersecurity space, the cloud assets, the endpoints, and then to take the telemetry data and you apply it in your SOC, Security Operations Center, to come to good outcomes. And of course, for you as a coder, because even in the cloud security space, you find 5 to 8 different modules of different players. Always better than to look into an integrated modular platformization. That's why I also believe that a security solution should be cloud-based, because otherwise you will not be able to scale with the flow of data that you have. So yes, AI to be counted with AI on the defense side.
So we have 2 minutes left, and a very strict guy in the back who is very strict with the time. So last question, and short answer, please. When we talk about the discussion we are having about digital threats and AI, what is your wish that we change in this debate? Chris?
What is the...
What should we change in the debate? Is there a myth or a false narrative that you'd like to change?
Oh, yes. So I think the biggest myth is we're all going to be out of work. Like, all the knowledge workers are going to be out of work. Clearly, robots are replacing manual labor. We all see that. But our knowledge workers going to be out of work. And I think it just, I don't believe so. I think we get more productive, and developers will just become more productive, as an example of a knowledge worker. Because there is this insatiable desire for the output of, say, developers or other knowledge workers. So you'll be more productive. You'll write more software. You won't be put out of a job.
That's good.
I think that there's two aspects. AI, what we need to change is there's too much talk about the negative sides of AI. Cybersecurity will do the right things so that you are protected, but I think there's enormous potential, like at the start of the digital journey for you as developers, for the whole industry, in leveraging AI for doing good there. And the one myth that specifically in cybersecurity you can help us to overcome, I hear sometimes, I need the best of breed to fix this. Best of breed. This is what we call point solution. We believe you need to combine point solutions, but put them on a modular platform. And that's what we are trying to do.
Helmut, on point. 5 seconds left. Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for the insights, and thanks for the audience for listening and asking questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helmut, Chris, and Johannes. It was very nice to have you on stage sharing your insights. So next on stage at 12:10 is the panel Architecting the Future, Leveraging AI, Cloud, and Data for Business Success. So come and visit us 12:10.